Russia. It's the largest country in the world and the official land of the free. Literally. Famous people include Putin, Stalin, Yeltsin, Lenin, and most importantly, Daniil Kvyat. Kvyat is often regarded as one of the most dangerous drivers in motorsport, getting through front wings faster than the average American gets through a Happy Meal, but in 2020 he's been suspiciously incident-free, and although this might just be wishful thinking, there is a chance that maybe, just maybe, Kvyat is a reformed man. So, has Daniil Kvyat finally seen sense? Grab some popcorn, put your feet up, and let me explain. Naturally, no one can be reformed if they haven't got anything wrong in the past, so let's take a little look at the Torpedo's F1 career up until now, shall we? Kvyat was born on the 26th of April 1994 in Ufa, Russia, and made his karting debut at the age of 11. Now, at first glance, this may seem a bit late to start motorsport, but as I've already mentioned, he's Russian, which means he could just bully his way into F1. Kvyat made his full-time F1 debut with Toro Rosso back in 2014, when F1 cars resembled sex toys more than they resembled the fastest machines on the planet. His first race for the team got off to a promising start, with him finishing P9 on debut, which made him the youngest F1 point scorer ever at the time. He scored a further 6 points over the course of the season, ultimately finishing in 15th behind teammate Jean-Eric Vergne. However, every cloud has a silver lining, or in this case, every silver lining has a cloud. In Monaco, his exhaust lost the will to live on lap 10, in Canada it was his drivetrain, in Austria it was the suspension, and finally in Germany his car decided to turn into a 200-mile-an-hour bonfire. Despite the incessant misfortune and the mediocre results, Red Bull were still keen to give Kvyat a go in 2015, where he replaced four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel. Unfortunately for Kvyat, his Red Bull campaign went much like Alex Albon's is currently going. While he probably wasn't the worst candidate for the job, there were certainly better alternatives, like Max Verstappen, who was still struggling at the time with voice cracks and growing pubes. Sadly, this 2015 season was far worse than the points tally may insinuate. Granted, he did outscore his teammate Daniel Ricciardo by 3 points, but does that really mean he was the better driver? Well, no. If you're driving for a top team like Red Bull, it's kind of expected that you spend more time on the podium than in the gravel traps, but Kvyat seemingly hadn't got the memo for this one. You see, if Ricciardo hadn't been given the less reliable car, he'd easily have beaten Kvyat, and even discounting the DNFs, Ricciardo didn't exactly have a stellar season. And of course, it was definitely possible for Kvyat to have a worse season than 2015, and I've just jinxed it, haven't I? 2016 got off to a flyer of a start by Kvyat's standards, and he was looking set to show the world how good he really was. But you see, Daniil Kvyat had forgotten one thing, and it was a very important thing. Max Verstappen. Now, for whatever reason, Red Bull have always been Max Verstappen simps, and thus when he scored points in 3 consecutive races, the big boys at Red Bull decided it was time to give him a raise. Naturally, as Daniil Kvyat had been the most accident-prone driver at the time, among other things, he would be given the boot and sent back to Toro Rosso whenever the opportunity arose. The first 3 races of the 2016 season were a mix between mediocre and stellar, but this was all about to change with the fateful Russian Grand Prix, which had about the same effect on the Red Bull garage as introducing a furry to a board of Illuminati. If you're not familiar with the events which transpired in the Russian Grand Prix, then Sebastian Vettel can explain.
Oh, I'm out! Crash! Somebody hit me in the rear, turn 2, and then somebody hit me in the rear again in turn 3. For sake, honestly, what the are we doing here?
And of course, that someone was Mr. Kvyat himself. This shambles of a Grand Prix was exactly the ammunition Red Bull needed to fire him and bring in a younger, faster driver. Now, where have I heard that story before? To add insult to injury, Max Verstappen then went and won on his debut for Red Bull, which basically cemented his future in Red Bull and banished Kvyat to the B team for good. He continued with Toro Rosso for one more painful year until even the B team were fed up with him and basically told him to fuck. Despite it only being 1 year away from F1, it seemed much longer than that to us F1 fans. Perhaps it was just because we missed him bringing the safety car out every other race, but maybe it was because 2018 was another year of Lewis Hamilton's dominance. Come 2019, Pierre Gasly had moved up to Red Bull, and Brendan Hartley had become Helmut Marko's latest torture victim, so naturally Toro Rosso needed 2 new drivers. One of them was Alex Albon, and the other one was, you guessed it, Daniil Kvyat. Now as far as I'm concerned, 2019 was Kvyat's best season to date. For the first 2 races. After 2 races of following the rules, the Torpedo got bored and decided to get involved in what he does best: crashing. Granted, the second of his 2 consecutive DNFs came as a result of Renault forgetting to fit Daniel Ricciardo's car with parking sensors, but he only had himself to blame for the crash in China, which sent both McLarens flying and sparked the first proper F1 meme of 2019. Despite his antics in the first part of the season, Kvyat managed to pull it together towards the end. Kinda. So of course, the main thing that people think of when they think of Daniil Kvyat is the crashes. I mean, they wouldn't call him the Torpedo for no reason, would they? And although many of Kvyat's seasons appear from the surface to just be that of your average midfield driver, when you look deeper into it, you'll find out that he really is a hazard. Hiring Daniil Kvyat to your F1 team is like trying to roast a chicken in the microwave. It'll get the job done, but the results will be mediocre at best, and it's probably going to cause more harm than good.
Disgusting!
For Daniil Kvyat, 2020 has been his safest season to date. He survived the first 8 races without endangering the lives of any other drivers, which to everyone else wouldn't be anything to be proud of, but when the bar is set this low, Kvyat might as well be a different person altogether. Granted, he has had 2 DNFs, but neither of them were his fault. The first DNF of the season came at the first race of the season, when his tyres decided that they didn't fancy being tyres anymore. His second DNF came at the 70th anniversary Grand Prix, where to the untrained eye it looks like he just lost the rear of the car, but at a closer examination it appears it was just another puncture. Don't get me wrong, Kvyat hasn't exactly set the world alight with his qualifying or race pace, but as I've already mentioned, the bar is set pretty low based off his previous results. So I finally got to the big question: is Daniil Kvyat a reformed man? Well, I mean, of course there is an element of opinion here, as yes, he's resisted the urge to break someone's front wing, but in my opinion he's still just as mediocre a driver. Take for example the Italian Grand Prix. Given the same circumstances, car and strategy, Kvyat still only just scraped a points finish, while Pierre Gasly was enjoying the first of what I hope to be many F1 wins. In fact, Gasly has over 10 times the amount of points that Kvyat has this season, and we're not even 10 races into it. To be outscored this conclusively by your less experienced teammate is frankly embarrassing, and despite what some may see, this does not scream F1 material to me. Of course, we can't just overlook the times when he's driven a good race, for instance his podium in Germany in 2019, and So who could replace him if 2020 ends up being his last season? Well, Red Bull's junior program is obviously the most likely option, with drivers such as Yuki Tsunoda, Jehan Deruvala, Yuri Vips and Liam Lawson among their ranks. But when have Red Bull ever actually looked after their junior team? Kvyat's definitely getting there, but at 26 his time is running out in my opinion, and let's be real here, with Red Bull and AlphaTauri going through drivers as quickly as they are, then it's not long until Daniil Kvyat once again feels the pain of Helmut Marko's dictatorship. Man, that was a long script to write. But anyway, if you enjoyed my take on Kvyat, then be sure to leave a like on the video and consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.